Today, we're going to look at our Grindelwald Sword from Arms and Armor. It's a very classic medieval sword. If you ask somebody to sketch what a medieval sword looked like, they would probably produce something like this on a piece of paper if you asked them to. It's got an asymmetrical type wheel pommel where it has the hubs and the circular shape, but as so many medieval pommels, it doesn't have a perfect circular pommel. It's got kind of almost a teardrop shape to it. It's got a large grip you can really get your hand around. It's got a guard that slightly turns down, and it's got this classic 13B shape. This is the type of sword that you see illustrated all the time for medieval swords. It has slightly parallel edges, just barely tapering towards the tip, and then a nice broad point. In the oak-shop typology, one of the defining aspects of the 13B compared to just the straight 13 is the length of this grip. This is about 4.5, maybe a little under on this particular sword, and that's about as long as they ever got with the 13Bs. The 13s will usually have a little bit longer grip on them and are sometimes designed as almost hand-and-a-half type swords, that earliest kind of great sword of war depiction. But these are definitely single-handed pieces. The type of sword that you see in knights' hands in illustrations, whether they are period illuminations or somebody illustrating Ivanhoe or Prince Valiant and those types of images. It is a beautiful sword. It feels really good in your hand. It only weighs about 2.5 pounds. The hilt itself has this iconic shape of the slightly downturned guard. A nice aspect of the guard is that it flares here as it comes out on the swing down, but also tapers in the thickness. So it reduces the amount of weight it carries as a piece from the profile look. And that third dimension is something that is often lost when people do reproductions of a piece. They don't necessarily realize that in medieval sword construction, thicker and heavier is not always better. The grip has a nice tapered oval shape to it with two mid-risers that add a little bit of tactile awareness to the hand. You can kind of feel where the sword is a little better, and gives you some response from what's happening with the blade itself. The blade is about 30.5 inches long or so. The whole piece is maybe 36, 37 inches, I think, just under 37. And it just feels really good in the hand, though the weight is a little forward for what most people would think. This is like 4 1/3 inches or so. So it comes down and has just an elegant, good feel where you could really make some contact with a target if you were cutting, or an opponent if you were in a real fight. And is just a sword that depicts all the elements of a medieval piece. When we went to do this piece, we named it after the Battle of Grunwald. The original we based this on, which is kind of corroded, is supposedly from Eastern Europe, and about that same 14th century time period. You have the Lithuanian Crusades going on, which are part of the Northern Crusades, where you have that conflict between the Teutonic Knights and the Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland. The West kind of decided it was going to be a crusade and put a lot of it about Christians versus pagans, but it was mostly a power struggle for land and power in that area with those actors, and is a wonderful medieval sword. We have two of them here that I can show you some of our grip color options. We have the red grip on the left here and the green grip on the right, with that mottled kind of texture we do to the leather for our colored grips. And those are both very popular, though that kind of mottled dark brown is probably the most popular coloring that we have on these swords themselves. In the context of the use of this sword, it illustrates an interesting aspect of medieval swords, is that length didn't always make a big deal, in the sense that sometimes today when people are ordering swords, they want them a little bit longer than everybody else's, because they equate that with some kind of advantage in the process of the sword being used. But in this case, you have a sword that is very handy, moves very well, very effective in a fight, but also is pretty reasonable for managing if it's on your hip and moving around in a crowded area or something. It is the kind of sword that you would see not only a knight wear, but someone who was maybe a little lower status, a soldier of some sorts. And it just depicts this great kind of medieval sword. If you're interested in this kind of piece, this would be a great option for your collection, and you can just click on the link below to go to the item page and check it out.